G'day guys, and welcome back to Motorrats Hunting and Outdoors. In this vid, I'm finally getting around to pillar bed my rifle. I'm also going to make a set of brass pillars to fit in it as well, because just bedding the action alone without fitting a set of pillars will improve the accuracy slightly, but the major gains that you're going to make is by fitting a set of brass or aluminium pillars, whatever you decide to make the pillars out of. So first thing I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about what you'll need. So the first thing you're going to need is obviously you're going to need something to make your brass pillars out of. So all I've used here, guys, is I've bought two of these brass pack hose joiners. You know, just from Super Cheap Auto, or you know, you can probably get them from Bunnings. Now they're a 5/16 hose joiner, and the part number is P-N0 space HC3. Now that's the one you're after. You know, if you want, I could also give the barcode label in the description as well. Now you'll notice they are quite long, and you'll need them quite long. The other thing is, when you go to do your rear pillar, which is this one here that I've already made, you'll find that center rib sits too high. You know, you need to use a little bit more of that length. It's not quite long enough. So what you'll need to do, guys, is you'll need to turn and get yourself, if you haven't got a lathe where you can put it in a lathe and machine it down, the easiest way to do it is to use a drill. I've just used the drill, put the drill on the vise on low speed, and I just took my file and just ran my file across it until I get it all nice and smooth to the way I wanted it. And I've still left a few of those little ribs in, just as something extra for the epoxy to turn bite to when I go to glue it in. The other thing you'll need, obviously, is hacksaw. You'll need some drill bits, a drill, a pair of vice grips, you know, a couple of bits and just small bits and pieces. You'll need a drill bit enough. Once you've turned and you know you've turned around and machined that down enough to where you like it, which is in that point of saying that. All I did there is just found a drill bit that suits to the exactly the same. And once you do that, what you're then going to need to do is you're going to have to drill out the original holes on your stock. As you can see there, I've wallowed them out to fit the pillar. Now I've wallowed out just enough so that the pillar fits tight. You know, not super tight, but so that it takes a little bit of effort to fit it in. Thing is with this, guys, when you turn and when you do cut it to size, first and foremost, you want to try and make sure you got one end square. Now one end will be square straight out of the factory, the other end won't be exactly square from where you've cut that off. Now that is the, well, once you cut it off, it won't be square, so you'll take the original square end, okay? Now what you'll do is you'll use your smaller little bracket that fits into place originally. You'll fit that in. Then you'll take your bottom metal. You'll fit your bottom metal in. Now once you've got your bottom metal in, you can then poke the screw up through it. And after you've hollowed that out enough, you know, you'll need to test fit this pillar before you cut it. You know, you obviously need to machine back and make sure you've got enough length where it's sticking out through the top. Once you've got it to where it's fitting tight, you can then fit it in, the pillar in, which is being a bugger at the moment. But like I say, this is fitted in a little bit tight. Probably take a little bit of a gentle persuasion. Okay, now we've got it in. Now, you're going to need your bottom metal in, plus the other inner bracket. And the reason for that is your screws in that hold your action into your stock are countersunk. And if you don't fit the screw up into the inside the pillar and then mark it, what'll happen is when it comes time for you to actually cut it, you'll cut through the pillar, and then when you turn around and actually go to glue them in, you'll find that it is now turned, because of that countersunk, it has now pushed the pillar in deeper, which has made it longer, which means you're going to have to turn around and try and file it down while it's in the stock. You don't want to have to do that. You want it spot on. Now, the way I measured it is I basically turned around and I took a piece of engineering chalk. Once I pushed that up through and allowed for that countersink a few millimeters, I then marked it, and then what I did was I turned around and I cut, and allowing just that little bit extra overhang, test fitted it into the stock. And you only want enough so that just as you just run your fingernail across the top of the bottom of the bedding where the rifle, where the action sits into the stock, you want that rise to just your fingernail, just to nick it. And that's perfect, because that'll basically turn and give you, once you pull down tight and you torque your bolts down tight when you're all said and done, that'll bring you back to original battery without a problem. If you weren't going to turn around to put pillars in this, you were just going to bed it, when it come time to taking out part of the material around your stock, you would have to leave a height reference point at the front, and you would have to leave a height reference point in the rear. And what a height reference point basically is a couple of millimeters thick of the original factory rifle bed, where you leave that behind. That way, when you do go to machine out the rest of the timber for the stock, those two reference points will stay exactly as they were factory. That way, when you put the bedding in, you torque the screws down in, or do the screws up down into the to pull the action into the stock. It will go back to where it was factory, and that will allow that bedding compound to make an exact copy of the rest of the action. Now, like I say, in doing that, you ain't going to try and get the same amount of accuracy as if you was to try and do this. As you can probably see, I've already JB welded. I've got some JB weld and done my my bedding before. I got a slight accuracy increase, probably about a little bit less than a quarter of a minute of angle at 100 yards. And after talking to a few other people, and that I compete with in 22LR that run the CZ actions and that sort of thing, a few of those have also turned and said to me as well. They also fit pillars in, which makes a humongous difference, because with the factory stocks, the main amount of movement that you get with the action in these is inside this main hole, because you got so much slop with such a small bolt. It allows the action just to move that little bit out of battery, forward and backwards. And you don't want that. You only want the slightest little bit of movement. So, hence the reason why we do it. Anyways, I'll now that I've showed you that, I'll go into I'll set up the drill with the other piece in, and I'll show you how I machine down the other piece. This is going to be probably a 2 or 3 part series on doing this, just because it's going to be a pretty long-winded video, just so I can give you guys a pretty good idea on what's involved and what you need to do. So I didn't show you making the first pillar, but I will show you making the second one. That way you guys have got an idea on how I'm going about it. So we'll come back in a minute shortly. I'll just get everything set up, and then we'll come back. So back in a second. Okay guys, so we're back again. As you can see, I've got fitting in the drill. I've just got my file here, and all we're going to do is just take our file, just going to slowly machine that away. And what you're going to do, guys, you're going to continue doing that until you end up with a piece that looks like that. So I'll just stop this. I'll continue on doing this. This will probably take another 5 or so minutes. I'll continue machining this down, and then I'll go on to showing you how I'm going to mark it up and everything else like that. So I'll be back in a minute, guys. Okay, guys, now that you've machined that down to where you want it, you're going to have to find a drill bit that is slightly larger than the original screw, because you'll notice when you go to put the original screw in, it does fit, although it is quite roomy. So you want to turn and take your drill bit, and you want to just turn and just take a little bit more out of that, just to allow for a little bit more. And that'll allow for a little bit more room to move. That way when it comes time to putting your screws in and screwing your action back down in, if any of you guys have pulled these things apart and changed the barrels in them, you'll know yourself. Sometimes it takes a little bit of moving left and right with the screw to line up and locate the thread on the action. So you just want to have that little bit of play, not too much, just a little bit of play, and that'll allow just for a bit of move in the action as well, just barely, just enough to to warrant what you want. Any more than that, and then again, this would be a totally useless process altogether. So you only just want it just nicely fitting. So alright, that's that part done. Now, to marking it out, you're going to take it out of the vise. Now, you're going to take your bottom metal, and you're going to take your floor plate, and this is where I was saying to you before, your screw will go through your floor plate, and because it's countersunk, don't know how well you'll notice this, but that countersink rises quite a bit. So when you go to turn and to feed that on, you'll notice we've got a wobble. Now that wobble will translate to down the path, to your actual bottom metal not fitting squarely and securely. So what you're going to have to do there is you're going to turn and take that same drill bit that you used before to drill your stock, and now what you're going to do is you're going to lock that back in, and you're going to turn and change it over to that drill bit. And you're going to slightly countersink that hole, just ever so slightly, until the point to where that countersink on the actual screw will fit nicely down inside. Just like so. Now that we've done that, you'll notice that's countersunk. If I take my bottom metal again, and I take that pillar, you'll notice now that when that's in there, that will actually sit flat. Okay, where it wasn't sitting flat before. Now, you can then take the bottom metal, the pillar rather, easiest to turn and to feed the bottom metal in first. I use the rear screw in the front as well as the rear, just because it's longer and it makes it a little bit easier. It makes it easier to locate the pillar when you put it in. Now when you do this, you're going to feed the pillar down through until it touches, which that's touching, and I'm putting a fair amount of upward pressure on that bolt head, just to make sure that countersink is all the way in, that bottom metal is completely hard up as close as I can get it. Then I'm going to take my engineer's chalk, and I'm going to come in from the side here, either side, to where the original factory bedding is, and I'm going to mark either side of the pillar. Now that I've got that marked, I can now remove the pillar, remove the bolt. Okay guys, so now that you've got it marked, you're going to take your hacksaw and you're going to want to cut just the other side of the line that you've made, just so that you've got a little bit of room to file down to that exact length that you want. Because obviously if you cut it too short, you've wasted it. So just want to cut it a little bit long. Try and also cut it as squarely as possible. The old blade's starting to get a bit blunt on the old hacksaw. Okay, so now that you've cut that piece off, you can throw the other piece aside. You may want to use that down the track. That is pretty much just shy of the length that we need anyway for the original, so we can throw those aside. We might use those in another firearm later on down the track. Or if they're no good for anything, we'll just turf them in the brass bin and we'll leave that for another project. Anyways, so that's not exactly square, but we're not going to be worried about it too much anyway, because when we turn to fit this back through, one thing you're going to notice with the front pillar, now you'll notice you've got your action screw hole is just here. Yeah, if you go to fit that pillar on, you'll notice there that the magazine well gets in the way. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to mark where the screw height is. Mark where that screw height is, and then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to try and put the that end that you've got back in the vise, and then you're going to have to take that file again, and you're going to have to turn that mark that you've got, and you're going to have to file that and keep filing it flat until you get a perfect fit, to where once you put the bottom metal up with the screw up through the pillar up to the action, where it pulls in snug and fits in there nice and tight, and you can actually get the screw into the hole without any dramas, without having to trying to force it or do anything any sort of extra pressure. You want it to just fit up in there nicely, and then that screw will fit straight in. So I'll go on and I'll do that. Once I've done that, I'll reset up the camera again, and then will come the part where I'll start to turn and to mix up the epoxy and glue these pillars into the stock. That's all I'm going to do for this video, as I'm going to try and glue these into the stock, and then because this will take a full day or so to cure. And then the next video will be the disassembly of what you need to disassemble off your action, how to make your dams, how to apply your release agent and all that sort of thing. Channeling out the inside of your stock to allow for the bedding compound and all that sort of thing. So we'll do that as another video. So like I say, it'll probably be a 3-part. The second part will be that included, and then we actually mixing, pouring the bedding compound in, and showing you that part of the process, and then that'll take again another day or so. Then after that, I'll make a final video of breaking the action out of the stock and showing you all the little cleanup bits and tidbits before we put it back together and show you the final result. So Alright guys, I'll go through and I'll get all this part sorted. I'll do that filing down, and then once that's all set up, we're ready to turn glue these in. I'll set the camera back up again, and we'll show you that process. We'll be back again shortly. Okay guys, we're now up to the part where we can start to glue our pillars in. So what we're going to do is we're going to mix up some of this epoxy. That's a two-parter, so we'll just mix up some of this. Now, with this, you'll have to try and glue one side in at a time, guys, because it is a bit of a pain in the neck. Right, I'll just cap that. Okay. Now I'm just using an old spoon just to mix it up. Okay. Now, we'll start off with the rear pillar, because the rear pillar is going to be the worst one to put in. It's going to be the hardest one to put in. So we'll start off with it first. Bit of a gooey mess. Alright, just going to sit that in the glue. Now, to do this guys, you're going to take your case lube, and as you see there, I've sprayed that there so that none of that glue will stick to any part of my my action as I glue these in. You'll sit your action in. Then you're going to take your pillar, which is loaded up with the glue. I'm going to drop it in, make sure it's up the right way. Right, then we're going to need a small plate. Now you got plenty of time to do this, you're in no rush, so just take your time. That's sitting roughly where I need it. And what you're going to do is you're going to start the screw. Okay, now that you've started the rear screw, you can just pull the lower plate aside, and you can drop your other one in. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to try and lay that there. I'm going to mix up a little bit more glue here. Actually, we may not even need to. We should have enough here to get the other one done as well. So we'll just whack some glue on this one. Yeah, once these are in, once it's set, and they're in place exactly where they need to be, you can come back later on and you can turn around and add more glue down the side if need be to make sure that it stays well and truly in place. Because we've removed so much material, you want to make sure that you do fill that space back up again. So, okay, so we got that in there now. We'll just put our front screw in. Now I've also put a little bit of that same Lyman spray also on the bolts, so that if you do happen to get a little bit of glue managed to stick down into that thread, that it'll just come straight out as soon as you go to back it off. So we're going to snug these down. We're not going to torque them down to full specs at the moment. We're just going to nip them down enough so that they'll seat into place and stay there. And it's as easy as that, guys. Now we can just let that sit there overnight now. That'll turn around and fully harden. And in the morning, I'll be able to come back, undo those screws, pop the action out of the stock, and then what we'll do then is we'll turn and get some more of the glue. We'll mix it up, and we'll turn and we'll drizzle in and around where there's any voids left, just to make sure we fill those voids. Let that dry. That'll only take, this stuff only takes about 4 hours to dry, but we're going to let it sit overnight just to make sure that it has glued in. That way when we remove the screws, everything will still be in place exactly as it's torqued down to be. Like I say, we'll mix up some more glue, we'll fill up those voids if there is any, and then we'll let that sit, let that cure. After that process is done, then we can go on to starting to prep it for ready for the bedding compound to go in. So, alright guys, we'll pick it back up tomorrow once we've turned around and we've got to that stage. We'll see you again then.